Naamatra Jang-rodhak cement.
After a volatile day of trading, markets end in red. Nifty loses 18 points. Sensex holds crucial 25,200 levels. SEBI board approves proposal for hiking public holding in all public sector units to 25% within 3 years. Government may get close to 60,000 crore rupees with the move. Eases offer for sale norms. Iraq tensions take toll on the crude prices. Brent crude rises to a 9-month high of $144 a barrel. And Swiss central bank reveals money stashed by Indians in Swiss banks, saying that it has jumped by 40%. Total money stash is a whopping 14,000 crore rupees. Well, hello and welcome to Business Wrap. I'm Sidhant, Sibal, and let's begin with the market news. Markets ended in red after trading a volatile session. Sensex ended 44 points down at 25,202 levels, while NSE Nifty ended 18 points down at 7540. Many PSU stocks declined after market regulator SEBI in its board meeting today recommended that all listed companies, including PSUs, should have at least 25% public shareholding in 3 years. Among the 30 shares Sensex packed, 17 stocks declined and rest of them gained. Gainers on the chart were ONGC, Maruti Suzuki, RIL, Coal India, GAIL India, which were down by between 5 to 2%. Losers on the chart were TCS, Infosys, Mahindra & Mahindra and Wipro, also Sun Pharma, which were up by between 2 to 1%. The market breadth indicating the overall health of the market was negative. Well, on to global market action. Asian stocks were lower on Thursday as crude rose, as investors worried about exports from Iraq as militant violence in the country continues. Key benchmark indices in Taiwan, South Korea and Japan rose by between 0.13% to 1.62%. Key benchmark indices in Singapore, Hong Kong, Indonesia and China fell by between 0.02% to 1.55%. European stocks edged higher on Thursday as investor sentiments received a boost from the Federal Reserve, which said that the US economy is rebounding and the US interest rates would stay low for some time. Key benchmark indices in UK, France and Germany were up by between 0.71% to 0.74%. Well, capital market regulator SEBI today cleared a slew of reforms, including a proposal to hike public holding in all PSUs to a minimum 25%, besides new norms for research analysts and ESOPs given by listed firms. Besides, offer for sale mechanism will be revamped to allow non-promoters to use this route for selling shares, and a provision of 10% reservation will be provided to retail investors. The decision was taken at a board meeting of SEBI and included many reform measures to boost primary markets. The SEBI board has made it mandatory for all listed PSUs to have at least 25% public shareholding within 3 years. The move is expected to help government raise close to 60,000 crore rupees through sale of excess shares in 38 state-run firms. On to our next news. Indian money in Swiss banks has risen to over 2 billion Swiss francs, which is nearly 14,000 crore rupees, despite a global clampdown against the secrecy wall of the Switzerland banking system. The funds held by Indians within banks in Switzerland rose by over 40% during 2013 from about 1.42 billion Swiss francs at the end of previous year, as per the latest data released by the country's central bank, that is the Swiss National Bank. In contrast, the money held in the Swiss banks by their foreign clients from across the world continued to decline and stood at a record low of 1.32 trillion Swiss francs at the end of 2013. The latest data from a Zurich-based Swiss National Bank comes at a time when Switzerland is facing pressure from India and many other countries to share foreign client details. India has constituted a special investigation team to probe cases of alleged black money of Indians, including funds stashed abroad in places like Switzerland. Well, time for a short break. More after this break.
अरे हरकू वाह, बीज, कीटनाशक और आज खाद भी। अरे इतना खर्चा कहाँ से?
एक खर्च की चिंता किसे है? मेरे पास है ये किसान क्रेडिट कार्ड।
कार्ड?
बैंकों द्वारा जारी इस कार्ड से किसान उसकी सीमा तक की रकम कभी भी बैंक से निकलवा सकता है और खेती बाड़ी की सामग्री कभी भी खरीद सकता है।
तो हरकू भैया एक कार्ड मेरे लिए भी।
किसान क्रेडिट कार्ड के लिए नजदीकी बैंक से संपर्क करें और पाएं ढेर सारे लाभ।
पहले यहाँ कोई काम नहीं मिलता था। महात्मा गांधी नरेगा ने यहाँ काम शुरू करवाया। महात्मा गांधी नरेगा ने हमारे परिवार को हर साल 100 दिन रोजगार की गारंटी दी है। महात्मा गांधी नरेगा में काम करने के बाद 15 दिन में मजूरी मिल जाती है। अब मजूरी के लिए शहर नहीं जाना पड़ता, गांव में ही काम करते हैं, बच्चों के साथ रहते हैं घर में।
महात्मा गांधी नरेगा साल 2012-13 में करीब 5 करोड़ परिवारों को रोजगार दिया गया।
समय पे काम, हाथों हाथ दाम।
दादाजी, आपका नाम क्या है?
रमेश प्रसाद।
आपको कैसे पता?
ये देखो।
नहीं चलेगा, बर्थ सर्टिफिकेट नहीं है आपके पास? बर्थ सर्टिफिकेट के बिना लाइफ आजकल बहुत मुश्किल हो सकती है। मेरे पास तो है बर्थ सर्टिफिकेट।
बर्थ सर्टिफिकेट स्कूल में एडमिशन, सरकारी नौकरी, वोटर आईडी कार्ड और पासपोर्ट हासिल करने में मदद करता है। इसे आप बच्चे के जन्म स्थान पर 21 दिन के भीतर नगर निगम नगर पालिका से बिल्कुल मुफ्त पाएं।
नन्ही सी जान की पहली पहचान।
Welcome back. Today we will discuss the Iraq crisis and its impact on the Indian economy. Let's begin with the story. Heavy fighting has shut down Iraq's biggest refinery and has added worries over crude supplies. Some analysts are now saying that the crude oil prices could even go to $125 or even $150 a barrel. A joint appeal for national unity by Iraq's Prime Minister, meanwhile, has appeared to give no or little effect in the country.
Some rare good news for a government on the seas. These pictures are set to show the Baiji oil refinery, the Iraq's biggest, under attack by ISIS militants. Shut down, its workers evacuated, but now secure in government hands, according to an army spokesman.
Where we foiled the attack, killing 40 terrorists and destroying vehicles full of personnel, weapons, equipment and ammunition.
The threat though remains and the rhetoric ramps up. Iraq's Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki is warning the violence gripping Iraq could spread beyond its borders. Iran's President Rouhani has issued a stark warning of his own on Shia places of worship inside Iraq.
We announce to all superpowers and their subjects, murderers and terrorists, that the great nation of Iran will stop at nothing to protect the glory of the holy sites and shrines.
Iran's out-and-out participation would transform the crisis into a conflict spanning frontiers. Many Iraqis see US airstrikes are preferable. Some observers question whether any intervention at all is of merit.
To a large extent, the problems in Iraq stem from Western intervention, at least if the Americans and the Iranians are working together. That gives us some hope that we have a coherent view as to what needs to be done. But I think the two sides are very far apart at the moment, and I rather think that this is not necessarily going to help us in the short run.
Analyst says there is another layer of uncertainty.
With countries like Iran, but also Turkey and the southern neighbors of Iraq, all potentially involved in this conflict, whether could be a chain reaction with other countries being drawn into this war or not, will be one of the determinants of how long this crisis will influence markets and of course the oil price as well.
Those prices are edging upwards, with some analysts targeting $125, even $150 a barrel. With generous US supplies currently and lower Chinese demand, those prices appear some way off, but perhaps not unreachable. Business Desk, DD News.
Well, let's take a look at the crude prices. International crude prices of Indian basket went up to $111.25 per barrel on June the 18th. The price of Indian basket of crude oil imports jumped by close to $4 a barrel to touch at $110.42 per barrel over the last week. The crude prices have already touched $113 per barrel, which may add to an additional $4 to $5 billion on oil imports. Meanwhile, Brent crude has touched at $114 per barrel on Thursday, which is close to a 9-month high. On fears over supply disruption in Iraq, the price of benchmark Brent has risen 4% in recent weeks as Sunni militants swept through northern Iraqi towns and cities. Sunni militants were in control of most of Iraq's largest oil refinery on Wednesday. That's almost 75% of the biggest oil refinery in the country. Well, the other worry for the government is inflation. Let's hear what the policymakers had to say on the inflation front.
22 कमोडिटीज ऐसी हैं जिस पर सरकार नजर रख रही है. उसमें 4-5 ऐसे कमोडिटीज हैं जिसमें कीमतों में थोड़ी बढ़ोतरी नजर आई है और इसलिए ये तय किया उसके संबंध में कि जहां जहां होर्डिंग है और इसलिए उसकी होर्डिंग की जा रही है कि लोगों को उम्मीद है कि शायद इस बार मानसून पूरी ना हो, तो उन राज्यों को सलाह दी जाए कि होर्डर्स के खिलाफ, जमाखोरी करने वालों के खिलाफ सख्त कार्रवाई करें. जो मंडियां हैं, जो फ्रूट और वेजिटेबल केवल मंडियों के माध्यम से जाता था, राज्यों को सलाह दी जा रही है कि उसको डीलिस्ट करें ताकि खुले बाजार में भी जा सकें. दिल्ली के संबंध में लेफ्टिनेंट गवर्नर साहब को यह सलाह दी जाएगी कल उसको डीलिस्ट कर दिया जाए. आलू और प्याज के ऊपर मिनिमम एक्सपोर्ट प्राइस ताकि वो एक्सपोर्ट उसका डिस्करेज किया जाए. प्याज दिल्ली जैसे शहरों में सरकार अपने पब्लिक प्रोक्योरमेंट सिस्टम के माध्यम से उसको दिल्ली लाए और मदर डेयरी बूथ्स और अन्य बूथ्स के माध्यम से इसको डिस्ट्रीब्यूट करें. चावल बड़ी मात्रा में बाजार के अंदर रिलीज किया जाएगा और जहां तक दालों का और एडिबल ऑयल, खाने वाले तेल का संबंध है, राज्यों को लाइन ऑफ क्रेडिट दी जाएगी कि कभी भी अपने राज्य में वो इसकी कमी महसूस करें तो इसको डायरेक्टली बाहर से मंगवा सकते हैं, क्योंकि ये 2 आइटम ऐसे हैं जो देश के बाहर से बड़ी मात्रा में आते हैं. हालांकि बहुत ज्यादा इन चीजों में बढ़ोतरी नहीं हुई, केवल 4-5 चीजें ऐसी हैं जिसमें थोड़ी सी बढ़ोतरी हुई है, लेकिन बाजार के अंदर कमी न रहे इसको मद्देनजर रखते हुए सरकार ने पूर्वानुमान लिया है और इसलिए ये कार्रवाई आज की.
Last few months and I expect going forward the next few quarters will be certainly primarily engaged in combating inflation as well as bringing down the level of stress in the financial system.
So if inflation is going to continue because of supply side constraints or because of any other factor, the government of India is working to anticipate any such shortcoming, anticipate the loss in production and prepare for it.
So policymakers talking about the inflation issue. Meanwhile, commodity market regulator FMC has curbed future trading in potato contracts for July, August and September in order to check prices by disallowing fresh positions and hiking deposit amounts on buyers. The Forward Markets Commission has taken this decision in the backdrop of rising prices of potato and other essential commodities, which could be aggravated by the likelihood of a subnormal monsoon. Meanwhile, India will pay Iran $1.65 billion through the UAE Central Bank to clear over 40% of backlog payments for oil imports. Since February 2013, when US blocked payment channels, India has been paying 45% of its Iran oil bill in rupees through a UCO bank branch in Kolkata. For the rest, it has been waiting for a payment channel. As much as $4 billion has been accumulated in past dues. But why does Iraq matters? Well, the trade between India and Iraq is almost $19.4 billion, with imports contributing $18.5 billion, while exports were just $0.9 billion in the financial year 2013-14. India mainly exports cereals, machinery, iron and steel, pharma, meat products and ceramics. The export is already suffering a decline of 28% in financial year 13-14 as compared to 2012-13, primarily on account of drop in export of iron and steel, sugar and petroleum products. So as we were talking, why Iraq matters is the fact that Iraq is India's second largest crude oil supplier, just behind Saudi Arabia. India is the world's fourth largest oil consumer and roughly imports 75% of its oil needs. Meanwhile, Barclays estimates that a rise of $10 per barrel in the prices of crude could shave 0.5% of India's growth rate. Thus, India is most vulnerable in a sense in the Asian country when it comes to the crisis in Iraq. Well, to discuss about the inflation and Iraq issue, both the eyes, we have with me a senior journalist, Himanshu Vats. Welcome to Doordarshan News. Sir, my first question is, will Iraq burn a pocket in India's budget, fiscal discipline and fiscal consolidation, the whole process?
I think it's already beginning to make a difference because crude oil prices have shot up to $114.5 a barrel. That is serious for India because one of the biggest imports is crude oil, which will have an impact on the value of the rupee, the subsidies, the fiscal discipline. So it's a matter of great concern. On two counts, one is the security of supply because Iraq is a major supplier, as your report just said. It's the second biggest for India, just behind Saudi Arabia. So one is the security of supply, the other is the cost of supply. So unless this crisis blows over very quickly and passes off, there's some resolution, there's some strong military action, whatever happens in Iraq. If this continues, it's not good for India at all.
Will it jeopardize India's economic recovery, given the fact that India has been on the path of economic recovery, but because the international, in a sense, the conditions were favorable for India, now the international situation is deteriorating. Do you think that India's economy, fragile economic recovery, could face some problems?
Well, it would face a problem, but not the kind of problem that might derail the whole process of recovery, because there are plenty of other very strong things. There's a very good sentiment in the market. Many countries are sending delegations, they want to invest in India. So all that process would continue. But, people like you and I will have to pay more for the fuel in our vehicles, probably LPG prices, they would have to go up. And even if prices don't go up, once the deficits go up instead of the prices, even that then hurts the entire economy.
What option does India has, in a sense, given the fact if, unfortunately, things go worse in Iraq, what option does India has?
One is the supply side. The good thing for India is Indian refineries, if you take the private and the public sector together, they are very well equipped to handle all kinds of crudes. So instead of crude oil from Iraq, which is very well suited for Indian needs because the product basket it produces matches Indian demand, it has a lot of diesel which India consumes. But despite that, even if you get crude from whether it's Angola or Venezuela or any part of the world, some Indian refinery can process it. So there is comfort that the economy will not come to a grinding halt if there's no oil, there's no production. So that much India can withstand. It's a matter of higher foreign exchange outgo, but I think our forex reserves are being pretty well managed. The reserves have grown in recent weeks. There would be tension, but there's nothing critical. There's nothing, no need to panic as of now.
So the other big worry is inflation. unfortunately, both the problems share a single word, that's I for Iraq and I for inflation. So on inflation front, first tell me, how can Iraq crisis exacerbate the situation?
That can happen if oil prices go up. They've already been going up, and the moment this is translated into domestic prices, one is the weight of petrol, diesel and various fuel in the inflation basket. That's not very much. More than that is the cascading impact it has. It makes transportation more costly, and therefore, whether it is vegetable, wheat, rice, retail products, anything that moves from one place to the other, that will become more costly. So to that extent, it will fuel inflation. The unlucky thing for India is this is happening at a time when monsoon is not expected to be very good.
I was about to come on that monsoon front, because it's like adding salt to your injury.
Yeah, exactly. And what all this does is it fuels inflationary expectation. Apart from the real fundamentals that lead to inflation, the moment there's expectation, that is also bad for the inflationary situation. And to that extent, the steps that the government has taken, which your report showed, which the finance minister was saying, they give a very strong signal to the market, and many economists of international organizations have noted that, if this is how this government is reacting, we are very positive that the budget will show a path of fiscal consolidation and recovery. So those are good signals that, the government is alert and ready to do anything immediately. For example, they took some decision of there will be minimum export price for onions and potatoes. Within a day, there was a decision on restricting futures trading. So the message to the markets, to the physical commodity dealers as well as traders is very clear that if things start going in a particular direction, we are going to clamp down.
So talking about inflation front, the finance minister also talked about the APMC Act. For our viewers, just tell us what is this act and how can amendment in this act can somehow control the inflation?
See, this act many years ago, whenever it was implemented, was enacted with very good intentions. The idea was that, if a big corporation or even a local trader is dealing directly with the farmer is illiterate, he doesn't know what's the market price. He may be cheated, exploited. So they said, under the APMC Act, that the farmer will have to bring his produce physically to a mandi or some marketing committee or whatever they call it. There are thousands of them all over the country. This would be monitored by the government. And the government will watch that farmer has brought this produce, sold at this price, and the traders, the corporates, whoever is buying, and government would know that there is no exploitation. So it began with very noble intentions. But like many things which begin with noble intentions, these vested interests come in. So under these various acts in a mandi, for example, you cannot deal in a mandi unless you've got some warehousing space there or an office space there, which is very limited. And so if you want to get into this trade, you then have to wait for somebody who's grown old and son has gone to USA. He will sell it at a huge premium. And there's huge incentives to recover more money. And according to information in a parliament question, I think last year, there are 4 to 5 middlemen who come in, and the difference between wholesale to retail can at times be 40%. Now, once you do away with this mandatory requirement, a farmer, he may still feel that this mandi is a good idea, I must come and sell there. But if there is a company, say some chips maker who want to directly buy potatoes, if the farmer is selling it at say 16 rupees in a mandi, he has to physically get it in a tractor, and by the time it comes to a consumer, it might be 22 rupees. So this company might go to the farmer and say, I'll come to your field and pick it up for 18 rupees. You save the trouble of taking all your potatoes to the mandi, because there the farmer is then at a weak situation. He's brought all his produce. If all the traders get together and say, look, we'll give you only this much, he has the option to either accept that or take back his produce at a cost in his tractor trolley and then come again. So the farmer gains, the customer gains, the only people who lose are the middle people. The mandis still have certain good things in providing a market, an established system. So if the farmer feels that is better, he can still get his produce there. So it increases the options, it reduces the middlemen.
So quickly, let's go to the Iraq question. Some of the newspapers have reported that around 20,000 crore rupees could be the loss to India, and actually it can be a hole in India's oil Bill, what figures you can give? What are the rough estimates?
See, a very broad estimate is that if crude oil prices go up by $1, then the impact on Indian economy is something close to 8,000 crores in a year. So if it remains higher by $1 throughout a year, then the annual thing is around 8,000 crores. So if it's gone up by a couple of dollars, or say $3, then on an annualized basis it will come to 20,000 crores. But these numbers are very difficult to accurately assess. They are annualized, and one cannot. It's not easy to say that okay, there's this fighting in Iraq, therefore India will pay so much. But in terms of oil prices, this broad equation, $1 and 8,000 crores is the.
Well, sir, thanks so much on elaborating the entire situation. Hopefully, situation in Iraq will improve, and hopefully the twin problems, Iraq and inflation, will subside, and Indian economy will be back on its track. And next year, and perhaps next financial year, we will grow above the 5% growth rate. Thanks for watching. Namaskar.